Wednesday, on the whole, is a sunnier day for Scotland and northern England, but a cloudier day further south. Nevertheless, 15 to 16 Celsius for southern England, South Wales, and 9 to 12 further north, but feeling more pleasant, I think, with the greater, sunnier skies across Scotland and northern England compared to today, and virtually everywhere will be dry. And really that's the theme that continues for the rest of the week. Thursday, Friday into Saturday as well. High pressure holds on. It won't be entirely sunny all the time. There will be areas of cloud floating around, but it will be largely dry and bright.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome once again to On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be posing this question. Do we need more coal mining in Cumbria? Amid signs that ministers could approve a new deep coal mine at the Woodhouse Colliery site near Whitehaven in a bid to lower dependence on Russian coal. Plus, we look at what Elon Musk might want to do with his new toy. That's the social media giant Twitter. All that and more on The Money after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's just gone 1 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. Russia is accusing NATO of waging a proxy war with Moscow by arming Ukraine. Well, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says weapons sent to Kyiv by the West are legitimate targets. But the Armed Forces Minister in the UK, James Heappey, says individual countries are supplying military aid, not NATO.
NATO is reinforcing the alliance's eastern flank as a defensive measure to reassure our Eastern European allies. NATO is not the donor community. Many of the people in the donor community are NATO countries, but similarly, Australians, the Kiwis and others are part of it as well.
Well, Lavrov also accused the West of flouting the principles of multilateralism. The comments came during a meeting with the UN Secretary-General in Moscow. Antonio Guterres is also speaking to President Vladimir Putin and will travel to Ukraine for talks with President Zelensky on Thursday. Mr. Guterres called for the war in Ukraine to end as soon as possible.
We are extremely interested in finding ways in order to create the conditions for effective dialogue, create the conditions for a ceasefire as soon as possible, create the conditions for a peaceful solution.
Well, meanwhile, the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin hosted more than 40 countries for talks in Germany to coordinate arms assistance to Ukraine. It follows his trip to Kyiv, where he announced more than £500 million in additional military support. Germany's also agreed to send anti-aircraft systems to the country. Austin says Ukraine can win the war.
My trip to Kyiv reinforced my admiration for the way that the Ukrainian armed forces are deploying these capabilities. Ukraine clearly believes that it can win, and so does everyone here.
In some other news now, the Prime Minister is going to chair a committee to try to tackle the cost of living crisis in the coming weeks. Downing Street says a number of ideas were discussed during a cabinet meeting this morning, which will feed into a more formal process. Boris Johnson has been urging ministers to come up with innovative ways to ease financial pressures on households without having to rely on new government spending. Well, meanwhile, the cost of food is rising at its fastest rate in 11 years, with the average household spending an extra £271 this year. Data from Qatar shows grocery price inflation hit 5.9% in April. That's the fastest rise since December 2011. The number of items on promotion has also decreased. The Speaker of the House of Commons is meeting the editor of the Mail on Sunday over an article published about the Deputy Labour leader. An anonymous Conservative MP was quoted as saying that Angela Rayner used her legs to distract Boris Johnson during Prime Minister's questions, while Sir Lindsay Hoyle described it as misogynistic and offensive. The number of children in the UK with hepatitis has risen to 114, according to the World Health Organization. 10 of them have needed a liver transplant. The UK Health Security Agency say most of the cases of liver inflammation are in children under 5. Experts are still trying to understand the cause of the spike in hepatitis. In the US, body cam footage has been released showing the aftermath of the fatal shooting of the cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Police are still investigating the incident. She was killed when a prop gun was discharged by the actor Alec Baldwin on the Rust film set last October. Video has also been released of Baldwin drawing the weapon during a rehearsal. He told police it should have been empty or loaded with blanks.
It should have been a cold gun with no rounds inside or dummy rounds, cosmetic rounds, no flash. I take the gun out slowly, I cock the pistol, bang, it goes up, she hits the ground, she goes down. He goes down, screaming. He's like, Jesus Christ, and I'm going. And I thought that maybe sometimes the wadding can come out if you're close and you get a burn.
Downing Street says there are no plans to make the extra bank holiday for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee permanent. The Confederation of British Industry and the Archbishop of Canterbury are in support on having the 3rd of June as an annual day off. But Number 10 says a bank holiday will cost the economy £2 billion. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head over to Liam for On the Money.
Coming up on The Money today, will ministers approve a new deep coal mine at the Woodhouse Colliery site near Whitehaven in Cumbria in a bid to lower dependence on Russian coal? It's a hotly contested question, given the environmental campaigners are adamantly opposed, and we hold a detailed discussion. Plus, Elon Musk's $44 billion bid for Twitter has come off. He's got the thing. What does he want with the social media giant? We look at what Elon Musk might do with his new toy. A social media platform with over 400 million subscribers. And my in-depth money talks interview today is with Sten Zar. He's the CEO and co-founder of Zago, a smart insurance company that wants to insure autonomous vehicles, e-scooters and all kinds of specialised vehicles, urging traditional insurers to keep up with technological developments. That's later in the show. And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? How do they impact you? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. But stay with us, because this is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're On the Money. Now, the government may be on the cusp of approving Britain's first coal mine in decades. The Cabinet, we're told, is rallying behind a proposal to open Woodhouse Colliery in Cumbria, which we're told is part of a plan to wean the UK off Russian coal imports. In October 2020, Woodhouse Colliery was given the go-ahead as the first deep mine coal mine in Britain for 30 years. And if developed, it will produce coking coal, which is essential in steel making. Ahead of last November's COP26 climate change conference in Glasgow, though, ministers launched an inquiry into the Woodhouse Colliery amidst protests from environmental activists. At that summit, the Prime Minister said he wasn't in favour of more coal, but he stopped short of outright opposition. And the decision on whether or not to open Woodhouse now lies with Community Secretary Michael Gove. Up until around 2013, coal was used to generate around a quarter of all electricity here in the UK. That's now fallen almost to zero, with Britain relying on gas, nuclear and renewables like wind and solar to generate that power. Britain's typically imported 40% of our coking coal for steel making from Russia. But British Steel, now owned by the Chinese, of course, and Indian-owned Tata, which also makes steel in the UK, they've stopped importing Russian coal since the war in Ukraine. Both companies have found alternative supplies from mines in Wales and the US and Canada. And Russia's invasion seems to have galvanised the Cabinet in favour of developing another source of UK coking coal for steel making, an industry which still employs 30,000 UK workers. Supporters of the new mine point to China, which still has over 1,100 coal-fired power plants and is building more each year. They say the UK now uses very little coal, so we're more than doing our bit to tackle climate emissions. Certainly, China burned 82.2 exajoules of coal in 2020. How much is that? Well, it's 4 times more than India, 9 times more than the US, and 430 times more than Britain. Michael Gove has until July the 7th to make his decision, but there are signs this announcement could come in the next few weeks. Many people in Whitehaven, a relatively deprived Cumbrian town close to the Woodhouse site, want the jobs and investment this new mine will bring. Environmental campaigners, often wealthier, largely living elsewhere, remain staunchly opposed. So what should happen? And that's our On the Money question today. Do we need more coal mining in Cumbria? Joining me for this discussion is an ex-coal miner, David Craddock, another Cumbrian coal mine supporter, Oliver Hodgson, who lives near to the site, plus a climate activist for Extinction Rebellion, Chris Riches. And with me in the studio, Head of Investment at Interactive Investor, Victoria Scholar. Don't tell me we don't have balanced and broad-based panels here on GB News, because we do. Let's talk to you first, David Craddock. You are an ex-coal miner. Yes. What do you feel when you hear that this deep coal mine may finally be given approval?
It's a sensation of elation after so much, the mine was approved and then it wasn't approved. And all these talks went back and forth. Eventually you thought, it's not going to happen. And then with all the upheaval, it's suddenly come to the fore again. And I hope it gets approved.
And what do you think, Oliver Hodgson? I know you live close to the site. What's the local sentiment like in terms of whether or not this mine should go ahead?
Yeah, I spoke to GB News last September about it with Bradley, and it's very much the same now. You walk down Whitehaven High Street, a good 95% of locals on both sides of the political spectrum really see the great benefits of having this mine on our doorstep. Whitehaven is one of the most deprived postcodes in the country, and we are crying out for £160 million worth of private investment. And I think the key there is this is private investment. And as I said, Whitehaven is a very deprived area. We rely heavily on the local nuclear industry, which is being decommissioned. So we certainly need this, and the demand is still there for coking coal. So absolutely, the local sentiment is very much pro-mine. Yes, we have a few who are very fixated on the current climate crisis, which cannot be denied. But for most of us, the economic benefits far outweigh the 0.1% it will contribute to our global emissions, the UK's global emissions, that is.
We've almost entirely removed coal usage, Chris Riches, from our electricity generation, as I mentioned at the top of the show. China's using 420 times more coal than we are, and yet we're polluting into the same atmosphere. Isn't there a case here for a little bit of a reprieve, particularly in light of this Russian invasion of Ukraine?
No, I don't agree, to be honest. I'd like to just touch on a few of the arguments that the previous panelists mentioned on jobs. This mine is going to create about 500 jobs, is what West Cumbria Mining says. A recent report came out last year or the year before, I think, that said that Cumbria has the opportunity to have 9,000 green jobs if the investment is put in the right place. Another thing on there is the Climate Change Committee, so the government's own advisory body, said that it is, this is a quote here, it's desirable and achievable to phase out coal in steel production by 2035. And this mine is predicted to last until 2049. So what we're actually doing, if this mine was to open, is to put people in insecure jobs when coal is going to become obsolete within the next 15 years. The right thing to do here is to start investing in those green jobs that actually have a future. And on the coal dependency question, this is just a complete lie made up by West Cumbria Mining. Over 90% of this coal is going to be exported due to the high sulfur content. It's going to be exported to countries with lower environmental regulations, which is going to be even worse for the planet. The recent IPCC report said that we're on track for over 3 degrees of global warming. That is just catastrophic for so many people across the country, and we cannot accept having a new coal mine.
David, what do you make of those arguments? I mean, Chris has, he studied this closely. You may disagree with some of his interpretations. What would you say to him when he says that Whitehaven can't have this coal mine?
The environmentalists seem to pick up on sulfur content. Sulfur content's never been a problem with Whitehaven coal. They just blend it to suit whatever they're doing. That's just a red herring that they throw in. The coal, you ask the relevant question, do we need the coal, yes or no? And if we do need the coal, why bring it from somewhere else when we've got millions of tons of it beneath our feet in Whitehaven?
There is a certain amount of hypocrisy here, isn't there, Oliver? The government says we're using a lot less coal, but we're still importing coal, so the climate emissions are happening. It's just that they're happening elsewhere.
Yeah, and we're importing coal from countries with really poor working conditions where we don't know, the workers' rights and whatnot. And I think also, you talk about it being a bit embarrassing for the government, but I think with the huge levelling up agenda, it's a bit embarrassing that this, they're not talking about the huge economic benefits. And I think, the chap earlier touched on the 9,000 new green jobs without a bit of substance as to who, what and when. Who are those jobs being funded by? The magic money tree in the Parliament orchard? We've just been through 2 of the worst years our country's ever faced, and he's on about 9,000 new jobs. But it would be nice to know where they're coming from, because obviously everybody would support that amount of jobs and that amount of green jobs, which are obviously very, modern and being with the times. But where's that money coming from? There is no magic money tree in the Parliament orchard.
Well, you're seeing here, Victoria Scholar, a microcosm of a much bigger debate. We're conducting it politely and with respect, as we always try to here on GB News, but passions are very, very high. What do you suspect might happen here?
I think this is a complex debate, and I could see both sides of the argument. On the one hand, this is a project that could massively stimulate the local economy, create a whole host of jobs and provide a massive economic boost locally. But at the same time, we need to take a step back and look at the broader picture and the environmental concerns. And although there is clearly a deficit in terms of our energy demand, with supply falling short across the country and in fact across the world, exacerbated by the war in Ukraine, it's not necessarily that dirty energy that is the solution. We need to look to some of those more greener solutions and renewables instead.
Dave, let's go back to you. You and I are the senior members on this panel. We got two of the younger members here saying that we need to focus on the green agenda. Aren't we just out of touch? David Craddock.
Hello?
David.
I'm out of touch.
Yeah.
I don't think we're out of touch at all. If you look at what's going on in the world, you suddenly realise how much we need to rely on our own resources. it's all very well, all this global economy and all that sort of stuff, but when all comes down to it, you're reliant on people in other countries making decisions that suit you when we should be making our own.
Isn't there something in that? I mean, Chris, you've heard that from David. He's raised a family and had a decent life based on coal mining. And then we've also got Oliver, who lives close to the mine. They want this mine to happen. China uses a lot more coal than we do, 400 times more. I put it to you again, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, wouldn't it be better for your cause? Wouldn't it be better if you showed a little bit of flexibility here?
I don't think we have the room for flexibility. The recent IPCC report spelled it out for us. It is end fossil fuels now or die. This is, we're in an emergency situation. And on one of the points of the other panelists about, where's this money coming from? We see from the government, when they perceive there to be an emergency, as with COVID, the money appears. It's about where that money is being funneled at the minute, and I'm more than happy to send the report about these new 9,000 green jobs to your producer after the show to send about as well. But this isn't this isn't a case of we have to have this mine when there are alternatives to it. Why would the panel not be in favour of creating more jobs, more green jobs, 9,000? Compared to just 500 from this mine?
Well, this is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. After the break, we'll keep this discussion going with my panel. Your emails are flooding in thick and fast. It is a very contentious debate. We're trying to conduct it here with some decorum and respect. We'll read out some of your emails shortly. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. The government could be on the cusp of approving Britain's first coal mine in decades. The Cabinet, we're told, is rallying behind a proposal to open Woodhouse Colliery in Cumbria, part of a plan to wean the UK off Russian imports. We're discussing, do we need more coal mining in Cumbria? Let's go back to my panel. Chris Richards, let me come back to you again. You're from Extinction Rebellion. Let's just broaden the debate out. There is a cost of living crisis happening. There's genuine fuel poverty happening in Britain now. I'm not talking about in the future, the scope of an IPCC report. I'm talking about now. Is there any argument at all for scrapping those renewable subsidies, which make up a quarter of everyone's electricity bill here in the UK at this time, at a time when we're in the middle of the tightest cost of living squeeze since the 1950s, with more price rises to come, when pensioners are choosing between heating and eating? How about just suspending those renewable subsidies for a bit? A lot of those renewable subsidies, as you may know, go to very wealthy landowners and other massive corporate giants.
Why don't we suspend the subsidies that are given to the UK oil and gas industry? That's totaled £13.6 billion since the Paris Agreement. I'd like to touch on what you said there about climate change being a future issue. That's just not true. It's happening now. You see the wildfires happening. You see the floods around the world. You see tube stations in London getting flooded. This is happening now. And the cost of living crisis, I'd like to say it's a political choice. It's not the fault of renewable subsidies. It's the fault of companies like Shell and BP that have made over £40 billion of profit in the last year. How is that fair?
But do you not risk, with all respect to you, coming across as just a little bit hard-edged when you do have many people in poverty in the UK suffering from huge rises in their electricity bills, companies folding, people losing their jobs, people on very low incomes? If we take those renewable subsidies off for a bit, if we suspend them, again, wouldn't that then be environmental campaigners coming across as reasonable, practical, pragmatic?
Well, I opened the show here advocating for 9,000 new jobs, just in Cumbria alone. This is what we need. We need to transition.
I'm talking about in the coming weeks and months, Chris. In the coming weeks and months, fuel bills are going to go up a lot more, given what's happening on global commodity markets. I'm not talking about 9,000 green jobs in the future, which aren't going to help older people struggling with their electricity bills now.
And I also said that Shell and BP are making £40 billion of profit now. How about we tax those, companies fairly? How about we create a citizens' assembly, where normal people can decide what happens? It's not for me, to lecture people on what to do. It's not for you to lecture people on what to do. These choices need to be made by the people in a assembly on climate change, on how best to reach net zero.
There's no lecturing going on here, Chris. I'm just asking questions that many people in Britain would want me to ask. David Craddock, what do you feel when you hear Chris's arguments?
I think the hypocrisy is astounding. The only question that needs answering is, do we need the coal? And if we do, where are we going to get it from? I mean, I've never heard no solution to these people. They still need the coal for steel making. Where are they going to get it from? Do they get it locally, or do they go to places where they strip mine, take the top of a mountain and just leave it? Or do they come to GB, where the practices have been proven over years? It's safer, greener, cleaner.
I just want to end this discussion by returning to you, Victoria, if I may. What you do for a living is you follow financial markets, you follow commodity markets. We've seen a huge spike in oil and gas prices since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But gas prices are returning now, not quite to normal levels, but they've come back a bit. What is the outlook for that energy price cap in October that Ofgem will set? That will also be on the mind of many of our viewers, given their utility bills. Yeah, well, we have seen huge commodity price inflation even preceding the war in Ukraine. Following on from COVID, we saw this supercharged demand for everything from food to fuel to steel, you name it. And that was struggling. The supply chains were struggling to keep a pace. So we had this big imbalance. And that's why we've seen massive commodity inflation across the board. And that's why we're seeing prices go up everywhere, from food to petrol and all sorts of different things.
So it's a really, really challenging situation. We've already seen the energy price cap go up once, and the expectation is that it will rise again in October.
Because it reflects wholesale gas prices, wholesale energy prices, because that's what's used to generate the electricity.
Yeah, so we have seen gas prices come off a bit, but we're still very much near the highs, and there's been sort of triple-digit percentage gains over the last year or so. So really, really difficult for households to keep a pace.
Victoria, thanks a lot for that. And thank you to all my guests for that discussion. It is a contentious issue. Thank you to all of you for conducting it in a reasonable way. I do think there was a good exchange of views, and I'm grateful to you, David Craddock, an ex-coal miner, to Oliver Hodgson, who is local to Whitehaven, where the Woodhouse Colliery is proposed to be. And also, thanks to Chris Riches, a climate activist at Extinction Rebellion. Now, staying with the cost of living crisis, more people struggle between heating and eating. Data suggests that the UK throws away around 9.5 million tonnes of food in a single year. One business wants to put an end to that food waste and offer a cheaper alternative to your weekly shop by selling products that are past their best before dates that are still perfectly safe to eat. Our intrepid Northwest reporter Bradley Harris is at one of their warehouses in Stockport. Brad, I know you like a bargain. Have you found any?
I love a bargain, Liam, you know me too well, and there are plenty to be found here at this warehouse in Stockport. You mentioned 9.5 million tonnes worth of food waste in the UK in a single year. 2 million tonnes of that is actually food that's still edible, still fine to eat. And here at Rogers Wholesale Foods, they are on a mission to not just cut down on food waste, but also to make food go further for families who are really feeling the squeeze of the cost of living crisis. Families, people across the country who are looking to save money where they can. Some bargains just to show you, Liam. We've got Maltesers at the minute. There they are. These packs of Maltesers are 14 for a £5. You can get 14 of these in a pack, and they are £5. And you can see they're best before 17th of March this year, so it's past its best before date, but that's the point of this product here at Rogers. That's their selling point, to try and get people to realise actually these products, these food and drink items, are still edible. And I was chatting to the managing director of Rogers Wholesale Foods, Mark King. This is what he had to tell me.
When we started the business, though, it was for people who were just about managing, people who work in everyday life and really, really struggling. But obviously, I talk to people who are on long-term disability. They've got no chance of getting off that long-term disability, and clearly their benefits are not meeting how much the cost of living crisis is having an impact on their lives.
In supermarkets, I could be there every other day because the children eat that much. So places like this, warehouses are fantastic because we can buy in bulk and keep it for the children.
So that was Mark King, the managing director of Rogers Wholesale Foods. And you also heard from Alex, who's a mum of 5 kids, who was a customer that was shopping here earlier on today. I spoke to her to find out why she comes to places like this as opposed to traditional supermarkets. And it is because of real bargains to be had that are of products that are still ready to eat past its best before date. This is another example, a box of crackers, £2 per case. Not just this box, I'm talking about the entire white box here. This is actually equivalent to 17p each for this. Best before date, the 11th of January 2022. So that is well past its best before date. But that is what this is all about. It's about trying to see how far you can take your cupboard store items. And it turns out you can take them quite far. It's also about reducing food waste. As I mentioned, 2 million tonnes worth are currently going to landfill, and it's food that can actually be eaten still today. So that's the point of Rogers. That's why they started out, and certainly they are now, Liam, tackling a cost of living crisis where, for many people, we talk about increased electricity bills, we talk about increased petrol and fuel costs. Food prices and food bills are also equally as important.
Thank you, Brad. That was Brad Harris, our North West of England reporter, who it seems to me for the next few weeks is going to be fuelled almost entirely by Maltesers. But a very interesting story. Thanks, Brad. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, today's Money Talks interview is with Stenzar. He's a man who believes the insurance industry needs to up its game to keep up with the future of transport. That's after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1:32. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Russia's foreign minister is accusing NATO of waging a proxy war in Ukraine. Sergei Lavrov says weapons sent to Kyiv by the West are legitimate targets. But the UK's Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, says individual countries are supplying military aid, not NATO. The Prime Minister will chair a committee to tackle the cost of living crisis in the coming weeks. Downing Street says a number of ideas were discussed during a cabinet meeting this morning. Boris Johnson, who's hinted that parents could receive more childcare support, wants ministers to come up with ways to ease financial pressures on households without having to use new government spending. The Speaker of the House of Commons is meeting with the editor of the Mail on Sunday over an article published about the Deputy Labour leader, which has widely been condemned as sexist. An anonymous Conservative MP was quoted as saying that Angela Rayner used her legs to distract Boris Johnson during Prime Minister's questions. Sir Lindsay Hoyle has described it as misogynistic and offensive. The number of children in the UK with hepatitis has now risen to 114, according to the World Health Organization. 10 have needed a liver transplant. The UK Health Security Agency says most of the cases of liver inflammation have affected under 5s. Experts are still trying to understand the cause of the spike in hepatitis cases. You're now up to date. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. Shortly, we'll be back to On the Money.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back, you're on the money. Now, we previously discussed what Elon Musk might want to do with Twitter. Only yesterday, the Tesla boss announced he successfully bought the social media giant in a $44 billion deal. That comes after weeks of speculation about the future of the social media platform. Twitter's co-founder Jack Dorsey stepped down as CEO in November 21, and the company's former chief technology officer, Agrawal, has now been in control ever since. Elon Musk has previously stated that the site doesn't live up to its potential as a platform for, as he says, free speech. And there's speculation the Tesla founder may restore former US President Donald Trump to the platform. So we're asking, is it a good thing that Elon Musk is taking over Twitter? Joining me on the show is tech analyst and managing director of Wedbush, Dan Ives. Great to have you with us, Dan. We really appreciate you joining us here on The Money. And Victoria Scholar is still with me in the studio. She, of course, is head of investment at Interactive Investor. So, Dan, are you surprised it happened so quickly?
Well, we're not surprised because this was essentially a game of high-stakes poker. Musk was playing chess, the board was playing checkers, and ultimately there was no other white knight to come in terms of another bidder because of the price and because of the nature of Twitter. And once he outlined his financing late last week, the clock struck midnight to get a deal done.
Now, you're joining us from New York. You'll be poring over the deal, of course. Does Twitter make commercial sense? It strikes me it doesn't track its users like Facebook. It doesn't target advertising the way Facebook does. Why is it worth $44 billion? B for billion.
It's not. I mean, again, it goes back to unless you're drinking gin, Jägermeister, or maybe some good whiskey, it's not worth that. And I think that's the whole issue. That's why there was no other bidder. Because Twitter's been a disaster platform for the last decade from an advertising perspective. Now, Musk, being the richest person in the world, I mean, he's pledging only 10% of his Tesla shares. Freedom of speech is one thing. Betting $44 billion on it's another. And that's why he'll be successful, because that's just the nature of Musk, what we see with Tesla, SpaceX, and PayPal. But no doubt, I mean, there's the easiest part for Musk was acquiring it. The hardest part will be fixing it.
What do you make of this, Victoria? Do you think that Elon Musk just wants Twitter for the influence it has? I mean, we just heard from Dan there. It doesn't really make much sense as a business unless it's seriously replumbed and rewired, and that may be very, very difficult. But as a public square, as a platform where, you know, governments, world leaders, all kinds of hugely important corporations and indeed people have their platform. It's where they break news. I mean, that's almost priceless in some sense, isn't it?
Yeah, I think once you're a billionaire, what you're looking for is influence. And we've seen that already with Jeff Bezos and his acquisition of the Washington Post. We know that Musk has been looking to try to get his hands on some sort of media company for some time. So this makes complete sense. Now, he describes himself as a free speech absolutist. That's very different to Twitter and its employees that have been focused on content moderation, removing trolls, getting rid of fake news. So there's a real difference in terms of ideology, which is why there was a lot of pushback initially from Twitter and its employees. But now that Musk has come through with this offer that's a 30% premium to its share price before we learned about Musk's stake, slowly, or not even that slowly really, but within the course of 11 days, we've now seen that Twitter has gone on a U-turn and now decided to accept this offer, rather than being faced with the fate of some of the other tech giants that we've seen in the tech sector that have really suffered this year. We've seen Netflix down 65%.
We have.
Facebook's parent company, Meta, down about 45%.
Very, very interesting. Dan, I think it is fair to say that a lot of conservative people feel that Twitter has been run to date by people who want to censor the debate against them. Donald Trump was famously booted off the platform. There's a sense that the tech giants are very close to your Democrat Party as opposed to the Republicans. Do you think Elon Musk might try and restore Twitter to Donald Trump? Do you think Donald Trump wants to go back on Twitter?
Well, I think, look, it speaks to now this becomes a firestorm issue. It's a political issue on both sides of the aisle. Musk inserts himself, and now it's $44 billion you just spent on this. So it's one, Twitter's board had no chance in terms of dealing with Musk. But now it's about what happened to the platform. Do people defect? Does it move to a subscription platform? And like Victoria talked about, you know, in terms of free speech, look, I think that's going to be a tightrope. Because as we all know, that could easily become a cesspool in terms of where Twitter's gone in the past.
I mean, Musk has said, hasn't he, maybe it's just canny PR in the heat of the moment, but he said he wants to restore his worst enemies to the platform, or at least not kick them off the platform. I hope even my worst critics remain on Twitter, because that is what free speech means. There's a tweet there with 2.5 million likes. Do Do you think this is just a ploy, Dan? Do you think he's just trying to counter criticism at the moment? I mean, how do you think this is going to go down among people at the Washington Post, at CNN, media outlets which have been characterised as being the kind of outlets that supported Twitter's previous decision to throw Donald Trump off the platform?
Look, I think ultimately it's more than Trump, because the issue for Twitter, it's been an underperforming social media platform for the last decade. And just to be clear, I mean, Musk is not spending 20% of his net worth just so he could bring Trump on the platform, right? I mean, this is much broader in terms of changing it. We could talk free speech, but also as a subscription, the advertising model. Musk couldn't do it from the ground up. And it goes back to trading Tesla shares for Twitter. It's trading caviar for, a $2 slice of pizza in New York. And I think that's sort of the issue for investors. It's a head scratcher. They were never going to get any other bidder. But when you're the richest person in the world, he's going to continue to sort of flex his muscles, and that's what's happening.
Though, in fairness, Dan Ives, we all know that New York pizza is the best pizza in the world. Something to do with the water table, my friends in the Big Apple always tell me.
And the bagels.
And the bagels, of course. Victoria Scholar, what's Twitter going to look like in 5 years? There you go. There's an exam question for you.
Well, I mean, I think Musk clearly has a magic touch if we look at his approach to Tesla and the way that he thinks about features from a usability perspective. For example, with the cars, he has a feature where you can put it on dog mode, so you can leave your dog in the car and it's safe with the aircon on. You can go and leave and do your shopping. He thinks of those little details. Twitter has really, really struggled with usability and monetization. He's looking to switch to that subscription model, quite cheap, $2.99 a month, and give everyone a blue tick that's not a bot. And he's trying to just get more users on the platform. So I think this is a good thing for Twitter.
Everyone has a blue tick. But if everyone's special, then no one is.
Well, then people won't want them anymore. Like Chanel handbags.
Victoria Scholar, I knew we'd end up talking about Chanel handbags on the show in the end. You are Head of Investment at Interactive Investor. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. And Dan Ives, Tech Analyst, Managing Director at Wedbush. Live from New York, Dan, we're so grateful to you getting up early and appearing here on The Money. We look forward to talking to you again very, very soon and enjoy the fantastic New York pizza. It really is the best. The sort of thin, I prefer it to the Chicago deep dish. Anyway, you've been sending us your emails in throughout the show about coal mining in particular. Do we need more coal mining in Cumbria? Anthony said green jobs can still go ahead as well because they don't help steel making. It's madness to import energy if we have it here. It must cause more greenhouse gases because it has to be transported. Alan contacted us. You're not an independent country if you can't make steel, and you can't make steel without coking coal. You're then dependent upon China, India, the US and Russia for coal. What a shambles. And Susan got in touch. I'm not in love with using coal, says Susan. But if we must, then we must. And John emailed us to say it's not just for domestic steel supply that we need the security of our own coal, but it's enough of a reason to ensure we must have this Cumbrian coal mine working as soon as possible. You've also been sending us some emails about the cost of living crisis. Sue says, I've had an offer for my energy contract when the current one runs out in June. The cost of energy has doubled, which I expected, but also the standing charge has gone up far more in some cases. I've been hearing a lot about that, standing charges going up. And Michael got in touch to say the way prices of gas and electricity are going, the only people who will be able to afford to pay the bills will be the super rich. And Matt said one way people can save some money with the cost of living crisis is by freezing a lot of things and keeping stuff past its sell-by date. The government focuses so much on the big schemes of helping the environment, but start small with household food waste. Well, Matt, I'm sure as an On the Money regular, you'll have just seen Brad's report there from Stockport in the northwest about that warehouse which sells goods that are slightly past their sell-by date but are still edible in order to lower that food waste. Good advice. Please keep your emails coming in. Tell me what we want to be discussed on the show. It's always good to hear from you. And now we come to my daily interview series. It's Money Talks, and today I'm with Sten Zar. He's CEO and co-founder of Zago. That's a smart insurance company. Now, we've all imagined what transport might look like in 20 years' time. We might have roads, or should I say, skies full of flying cars, as seen in Back to the Future, that fabulous 1980s movie. Or if heights aren't your thing, maybe a Total Recall-style robot-driven car would be better. Either way, technology is fast evolving. And according to research, 36% of Brits are already using electric or hybrid vehicles, e-scooters or transport apps. But how do we insure these new types of vehicles? STEM believes the insurance industry needs to catch up with the fast-paced development of new transport technology. And Zago insures many public e-scooters that can be seen around Europe's cities, becoming the UK's first insurance unicorn. That's a company worth £1 billion in 2021. And here he is in the studio. It's Sten Zaar, the CEO of Zago, my latest guest on Money Talk. Sten, great to have you here in the studio.
Good afternoon.
You're welcome to On the Money. Why is the existing insurance industry, in your view, so behind the times?
Well, the world is evolving rapidly. Like today, you can see that there's so many self-driven cars out there, but the technology is out there to be fully autonomous, for example, and the insurance is not necessarily taking into account the latest risk. For example, 60% of accidents happening today are because of driving because of mobile phone. Mobile phones did not exist 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's very important that we constantly evolve and take into account new risks.
So in that sense, you think autonomous vehicles that drive themselves are safer than vehicles that you drive, because if the vehicle's driving itself, you're less likely to be on your phone?
Yes, absolutely. At Zago, we have a vision that by 2040, it'll be fully autonomous. There will be cars out on the road that do not have a steering wheel. There will be cars that are one-person cars, two-people cars, and so forth. And that means it'll be no accidents, it'll be no traffic jams, and it'll be so much more safer on our roads for all of us.
I mean, some people will be listening thinking that's completely mad. How can we rely on the technology? Computers go wrong all the time. What could possibly be safer than a human being with all those human instincts driving a car? How sure are you that it is much safer?
It is. When you look at the statistics of a car having an accident and a person having an accident, and on a large scale, you'll see that it is so much safer. Take airplanes, like there's 99% of the time driven by a computer, right? So,
but not the takeoff and landing.
Well, I don't think that's far off either. And with cars, you can see technology already exists. It's out there and it works. It's just a matter of the surrounding services and infrastructure to put in place. From regulatory point of view, all the way through to maintenance, insurance, and other parts. So I think if we really want to be in a place where it's so much safer, cleaner, and autonomous, then we do need to all thousands of companies come together and think what's their role to enable it.
Do you come to this then from an insurance background, a tech background, a general business background, or all three?
Yeah, well, personally, this is the first insurance company, but I come from a technology background.
And what happens when you if you insure a driverless vehicle and there's a crash? Like, who's to blame when there's no human involved? The people that develop the software?
That's a great point, in a sense that today you look at the driver, because driver was controlling the vehicle.
Yeah.
Then it's a hardware risk, because there could be some flaws there. Software risk could be in there, or it's a cyber risk. So therefore, the insurance world will be turned upside down, right? But it'll be definitely overall, we save more lives, there'll be no traffic issues, and it'll be significantly cleaner for the world as well.
So if there is a crash, I mean, where is the legal liability if someone, God forbid, runs over a kid in a driverless vehicle? Is it the software company? So the parents of that child have to try and tackle some huge conglomerate that's in another country? I don't wish to be flippant. You've obviously built a superb business, and it's beyond anything I could ever achieve. But I'm just asking questions that I think ordinary people will be thinking.
Absolutely. Like, this is something that we have to work out together with insurance companies, governments, the manufacturers of the vehicles, and so forth. So we all need to come together. Technically speaking, technology is there. So this is the element of bringing together those parts and having a conversation, because the ultimate outcome will be significantly better than it is today.
When are we going to move to autonomous vehicles? There's lots of tests going on. There seems to be a battle in the press and the media with people saying it's absolutely great or it's completely dangerous. You've obviously built a huge business off the back of this and are massively respected. So when are we going to see them?
Well, I think it's a matter of time. It's difficult to predict, but when
within
we talk
10
about,
years, within 5 years?
In our future 2040 vision, we say it's going to be 100% autonomous. So there's going to be phase out of, and all the cars we use today will probably be in a museum. And I encourage everyone to kind of tell us whether we've missed anything or make sense. If you go on Zego.com/2040, tell us what we missed from the future, and let's together discuss it, because in our opinion, it's exciting and we all have a role to play. Like insurance is like a microchip in a mobile. Like you never see it, but it's critical for the mobile to work, right? And there's dozens and dozens of services around it.
I mean, the whole history of human commerce and development is built on insurance. People wouldn't have got in galleons and crossed seas unless there were insurance companies that were willing to, give them some kind of cover. Otherwise, it would be utterly reckless what they were doing. And of course, in ancient communities, farmers developed insurance industries, didn't they? It's a very long and indeed, in a general sense, noble thing to do. But if you think by 2040, as you said, we're going to be all autonomous vehicles, presumably then by 2030, there will be some. I know it's not in your gift. It's all about government regulation. There's lots of politics. But in terms of the technology...
Yes, like technology out there, certain car manufacturers today show that vehicle can drive 90% of the time already. So, and when you look at the evolution over the last 3-4 years, it's been rapid. And if you fast forward another 3-4, I'm sure over the next 5 years, we're going to be seeing vehicles on the road autonomously driving. And then it's just a handful initially, but then it'll be growing rapidly from there.
Here's a really practical question. Again, it's not in your gift. You're not the government. All you can do is try and convince ministers and officials and say your piece on shows like this. But e-scooters, I've been using e-scooters in London and other cities in the UK. They're absolutely fabulous. When do you think we're going to be using them on the roads? Do you think we will be using them legally on the roads anytime soon?
I really hope so. Again, when I fast forward decades, I could see that this is one type of a vehicle. Well, in our 2040 vision, there will be one-person car standing up in a little box, and it's a car, and you just do your readings, whatever you want to do, and that takes you from A to B. So in e-scooter sense, it's just one of the many vehicles that will be developed over the next 10 years that will then make the city a much greener place and quicker to go from A to B. There's, of course, with new vehicles, things to iron out, and insurance has a role to play. I'm very happy that we've played a key role there, making sure that multiple companies can actually get the products on the road and in customers' hands. Because initially they were all considered as cars and charge insurance like it's a car, but it's a very different risk in that sense.
Well, Sten, I meet lots of interesting people in this job, and you're right up there. You really are a trailblazer technologically and financially. I wish you all the best of luck, and I look forward to seeing which of your predictions come true. Sten Saar, you are the CEO and founder of the insurance specialist Zego. Thanks a lot for coming here on Money Talks. Wow. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m, continuing to focus on the cost of living crisis, helping you beat the squeeze. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A dry and bright day for many of us. Cloud will build through the afternoon with showers for some, but no really significant rainfall in the forecast for today or the next few days as high pressure builds once again from the north, and we've got this north to northeasterly airflow, so it's turning a little chillier, and we'll notice that at night with a few overnight frosts, but also it's keeping things dry and bright for the vast majority. The best of the sunshine will be across central, southern and western parts of the UK, so for Northern Ireland, Wales, southern England. There'll be a few showers in the thicker cloud across northern and eastern England, and Scotland's going to be mostly dry, if rather cloudy. It will feel cool, particularly along that east coast, 9 to 12 Celsius with a cool easterly breeze, but 15 or 16 Celsius for southern England, South Wales, Northern Ireland, where we do see some sunny spells. The cloud and any showers tend to fade away overnight, leaving largely clear skies. And under those clear skies, with that colder air in place, we'll see a touch of frost. In some of the sheltered spots across northern parts of the country, -2, -3 Celsius is possible. Could even see a -1 in southern areas. But in urban parts, I think we'll be frost-free. And it will be largely dry and bright once again as we start off Wednesday. Now, Wednesday, on the whole, is a sunnier day for Scotland and northern England, but a cloudier day further south. Nevertheless, 15 to 16 Celsius for southern England, South Wales, and 9 to 12 further north, but feeling more pleasant, I think, with the greater sunnier skies across Scotland and northern England compared to today, and virtually everywhere will be dry. And really that's the theme that continues for the rest of the week. Thursday, Friday into Saturday as well. High pressure holds on. It won't be entirely sunny all the time. There will be areas of cloud floating around, but it will be largely dry and bright.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of